The crystalline waters of the Caribbean stretched endlessly beneath the private yacht Meridian, its deck gleaming under the afternoon sun like polished marble. Aboard, Zara Washington adjusted her designer sunglasses and sipped champagne that cost more than most people's monthly salary. At 38, she commanded a tech empire worth $4 billion, her algorithms powering everything from social media platforms to military defense systems. The world knew her as the brilliant CEO who'd revolutionized cybersecurity, but what they didn't know was gathering momentum 300 miles northwest. The first sign came as a distant rumble, barely audible above the yacht's gentle engine hum. Zara's bodyguard, Marcus, straightened from his position near the stern. "Ma'am, we've got incoming aircraft." His hand moved instinctively toward his concealed weapon, years of protection detail training kicking in. But Zara remained motionless, her dark eyes scanning the horizon with an intensity that seemed almost supernatural. The rumble grew louder, more distinct. Not one aircraft, multiple. The sound signature was unmistakable to anyone who'd spent years around military hardware. Twin rotors, heavy lift capability approaching fast and low. Two MH-60S Seahawks emerged from the heat shimmer like metallic predators, their olive-drab paint schemes cutting stark lines against the azure sky. Marcus reached for his radio. "This is Meridian Security to Nassau Control. We have unidentified military helicopters." But Zara's hand caught his wrist with surprising strength. "Stand down, Marcus." Her voice carried an authority that went deeper than wealth, deeper than corporate power. It was the voice of someone who'd given orders when lives hung in the balance. The lead Seahawk descended with mechanical precision, its rotor wash turning the calm sea into a churning cauldron. Through the aircraft's open door, Zara could see the unmistakable silhouettes of Navy SEALs in full combat gear, but something was wrong with this picture. These weren't tactical operators positioning for assault or extraction. Their weapons remained secured, their posture respectful rather than aggressive. The helicopter touched down on the yacht's reinforced landing pad with barely a whisper of impact, a testament to the pilot's skill. 8 figures emerged, their movements fluid and coordinated, but as they approached Zara, something extraordinary happened. The team leader, a weathered man with lieutenant commander's insignia barely visible beneath his tactical vest, stopped exactly 6 feet away and executed a crisp military salute. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying across the deck despite the dying rotor noise. "Lieutenant Commander Hayes, SEAL Team 7, we have urgent orders concerning Operation Nightfall." The respect in his voice was absolute, unwavering. Marcus stared in bewilderment, but Zara simply nodded, her champagne glass forgotten as she stepped forward into a world she'd left behind 15 years ago. The second Seahawk had landed without her notice, disgorging another 8 operators who formed a perfect perimeter around the yacht's deck. This wasn't a capture or protection detail, this was an honor guard. The realization hit Marcus like cold water. His billionaire employer had just received the kind of military respect reserved for generals and war heroes. But Zara Washington had never been in the military. Or had she? The question hung in the Caribbean air like the lingering scent of aviation fuel, waiting for an answer that would change everything anyone thought they knew about the woman who'd conquered Silicon Valley. "Gentlemen," Zara said quietly, and somehow every SEAL on deck heard her perfectly. "I assume this concerns the Meridian protocols." Lieutenant Commander Hayes's eyes widened slightly, the only crack in his professional demeanor, because the Meridian protocols were classified at levels that didn't officially exist. The morning had started with a billionaire on vacation. Now, as storm clouds gathered on the distant horizon, something far more dangerous was awakening. The SEALs remained at attention, waiting for orders from a woman whose real story was about to unfold like a classified document finally seeing daylight. Zara moved toward the helicopter with the fluid grace of someone intimately familiar with military aircraft. Her designer heels clicked against the deck like a countdown timer, each step echoing with the weight of secrets that had been buried beneath quarterly earnings reports and board meetings for over a decade. Lieutenant Commander Hayes fell into step beside her, his voice dropping to a level meant only for her ears. "Ma'am, we have a code black situation developing in the South China Sea. The Pentagon is requesting immediate activation of all Meridian assets." The formal language couldn't disguise the urgency bleeding through his professional composure. "Time frame?" Zara's question came without hesitation, her mind already shifting gears from vacation mode to something far more focused. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Her posture straightened, her gaze sharpened, and suddenly the designer clothes seemed like an elaborate disguise rather than her true uniform. 12 hours, ma'am, maybe less." Hayes paused at the helicopter's door, his hand resting on the frame. "The situation involves Chinese naval forces and, well, ma'am, they're using technology that matches your old specifications, the ones from Project Blackbird." The name hit Zara like a physical blow, though she didn't let it show. Project Blackbird had been her masterpiece, her contribution to a war that officially never happened. It had also been her nightmare, the reason she'd walked away from everything she'd built in the shadows and started over in the bright, transparent world of corporate America. Marcus stepped forward, confusion and concern warring across his features. Ms. Washington, I don't understand what's happening here, but my job is to keep you safe, if there's some kind of military situation. Your job, Zara interrupted gently but firmly, is to trust that I know what I'm doing. She turned to face him fully, and for the first time, Marcus saw something in her eyes that transcended wealth or corporate power. It was the look of someone who'd stared down death and found it wanting. Ma'am, Hayes interjected, we have transportation standing by, full escort, priority clearance to Norfolk. Admiral Chen is personally overseeing the briefing. He paused, then added with unmistakable respect, she specifically requested that we use your old call sign in all communications. Zara's breath caught for just a moment. Her call sign. She hadn't heard it spoken aloud in 15 years, hadn't allowed herself to even think it most days. But now, standing on the deck of her yacht with Navy SEALs at attention, it felt like putting on an old uniform that still fit perfectly. And what call sign would that be? Marcus asked, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Lieutenant Commander Hayes looked to Zara for permission. When she nodded slightly, he spoke the word that would shatter every assumption about the woman who'd built a $4 billion empire from nothing. Valkyrie. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant rumble of thunder from the approaching storm. On the horizon, more aircraft were appearing, not just helicopters now, but the distinctive silhouette of an E-2 Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft, its rotating radar dome cutting through the Caribbean sky like a mechanical constellation. This wasn't just a military operation. This was a recall to duty for someone who'd once been considered the most dangerous pilot in the U.S. arsenal. Someone who'd walked away from that life to build something entirely different, only to find that the past had a way of reclaiming its own. Zara Washington, Billionaire CEO, was about to disappear into the classified world that had forged her. In her place would emerge Valkyrie, the ghost pilot whose exploits had become legend in certain military circles, whose real name had been scrubbed from every official record, whose existence was known only to those with clearance levels that required presidential approval. The Caribbean sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Tomorrow, if there was a tomorrow, everything would be different. The woman boarding the Seahawk was leaving behind her public life, her corporate empire, her carefully constructed identity. What emerged on the other side would depend entirely on whether Valkyrie still remembered how to fly into hell and come back alive. The Seahawk lifted off into the dying light, carrying secrets toward a horizon where storm clouds gathered like an omen of the chaos to come. Behind them, the empty yacht drifted on calm seas, the only evidence of what had transpired, the lingering scent of aviation fuel and the echo of a call sign that had once struck fear into the hearts of America's enemies. But the real story was just beginning. In classified briefing rooms and encrypted communications channels, word was spreading that the ghost was coming home. And in the South China Sea, Chinese naval commanders were about to learn why some legends should never be awakened. The flight to Norfolk took 6 hours, but for Zara, it might as well have been a journey back through time itself. Strapped into the Seahawk's jump seat, she found herself studying the faces of the SEALs around her with the analytical precision that had made her a legend in Silicon Valley, and before that, in far more dangerous arenas. These weren't ordinary operators. Their gear bore the subtle markings of DEVGRU, the Naval Special Warfare Development Group that officially didn't exist. More telling were their eyes, the hard, calculating stares of men who'd seen things that existed only in classified after-action reports. They watched her with a mixture of curiosity and respect that suggested they knew exactly who she really was. Lieutenant Commander Hayes handed her a secure tablet, its screen displaying intelligence briefings that made her blood run cold. Satellite imagery showed Chinese Type 55 destroyers moving in formation through the South China Sea, their advanced sensor arrays painting electronic pictures of everything within a 200-mile radius. But it wasn't the ships that concerned her. It was the aircraft operating from their decks. J-20 stealth fighters, Hayes said quietly, his voice barely audible above the helicopter's engine noise. But modified, enhanced, using technology that our analysts say shouldn't exist. He paused, then added with grim significance, technology that matches the specifications from Project Blackbird. Zara's fingers moved across the tablet with practiced efficiency, zooming in on technical readouts that would have been meaningless to most people. To her, they told a story of betrayal and stolen secrets, of technology she'd helped develop being turned against its creators. The irony wasn't lost on her. The weapons she designed to keep America safe were now threatening to tear the Pacific apart. How, she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Dr. Alina Vasquez, Hayes replied, confirming her worst fears. She disappeared from DARPA 3 months ago, took a lot of classified material with her. He handed her another file, this one bearing the red-bordered classification markings that indicated information so sensitive it required special handling. Intelligence suggests she's working directly with the Chinese military's Advanced Research Division. Alina, the name brought back memories Zara had spent 15 years trying to forget. Brilliant, ambitious, and utterly ruthless, Alina had been her partner on Project Blackbird, the one person who understood the technology as intimately as Zara herself. They'd been friends once, had even been lovers briefly before the pressure of their work and the weight of its implications had driven them apart. Now Alina was the enemy, and Zara was being called back to stop her. The symmetry was almost poetic, if poetry could be written in classified ink and signed in blood. The Seahawk banked sharply as they approached Norfolk Naval Base, and Zara caught her first glimpse of the massive aircraft carrier waiting in the harbor. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the Navy's most advanced nuclear-powered supercarrier, floated like a steel island in the Virginia darkness. Its flight deck was alive with activity even at this late hour, aircraft being prepped and moved with the choreographed precision of a deadly ballet. "That's your ride," Hayes said, following her gaze. "Admiral Chen has set up a complete operations center aboard the Ford, everything you'll need for the mission." He paused, then added with unmistakable pride, "including your old aircraft." Zara's breath caught in her throat. Her old aircraft. She'd assumed it had been scrapped years ago, another piece of classified technology consigned to the boneyards where military secrets went to die. But apparently some things were too valuable to discard, even when their pilots walked away. The Seahawk touched down on the Ford's deck with mechanical precision, and Zara found herself stepping out into a world she'd left behind 15 years ago. The sounds hit her first. The constant whine of jet engines, the sharp bark of orders being given, the electronic chirping of communication systems managing the controlled chaos of carrier operations. Then came the smells: aviation fuel, salt air, and the indefinable metallic scent of sophisticated machinery operating at the edge of its capabilities. Waiting for her was Admiral Sarah Chen, a woman whose reputation had grown even more formidable in the years since Zara had known her as a mere captain. Chen's uniform bore the fruit salad of ribbons that spoke of a career spent in the most classified corners of naval aviation, and her dark eyes held the keen intelligence that had made her one of the youngest flag officers in Navy history. "Welcome back, Valkyrie," Chen said, extending her hand. The formality was for the benefit of the dozens of crew members and officers watching this reunion, but Zara could see the genuine warmth beneath the military protocol. "I wish it were under better circumstances." "So do I, Sarah," Zara replied, using the Admiral's first name with the casual familiarity of shared history. "But when has it ever been under good circumstances?" Chen's smile was thin but genuine. "Fair point, follow me, we have a lot to discuss and not much time to do it in." She turned and began walking toward the island's superstructure, her pace brisk but not hurried. "The situation has deteriorated significantly in the last 6 hours. Chinese forces have established what they're calling an exclusion zone around the Spratly Islands. Any military aircraft that enters gets intercepted by J-20s using technology that—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Technology that makes our current stealth capabilities look like crop dusters." They entered the carrier's Combat Information Center, a dimly lit space filled with screens displaying tactical information from across the Pacific. Officers and enlisted personnel moved with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine, their voices creating a constant murmur of updates and acknowledgments. At the center of it all was a massive holographic display showing the South China Sea, with friendly forces in blue and enemy positions in red. The red was spreading. "They're not just establishing air superiority," Chen continued, gesturing to the display. "They're creating a technology demonstration, showing the world that they've leapfrogged American military capabilities." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And they're right, with Alina's modifications to your Blackbird specifications, they've created aircraft that can penetrate our defenses at will." Zara studied the tactical display with the eye of someone who'd spent her career thinking 3 moves ahead. The Chinese positioning wasn't random. It was carefully calculated to create maximum psychological impact while minimizing the risk of direct confrontation. They were playing a game of military chess on a global scale, and they were winning. "What's the mission?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer would involve flying into the heart of enemy territory with technology that was 15 years out of date. Chen's smile was predatory. "You're going to steal their secrets, Valkyrie, just like old times." The briefing room attached to the CIC contained a single conference table surrounded by chairs that had seen better days. But the equipment lining the walls was state-of-the-art. Secure communication terminals, holographic projectors, and analysis stations that could process intelligence data in real time. Sitting at the table were three other people whose presence made Zara's blood run cold. Colonel Marcus Webb, Air Force Special Operations, Captain Jennifer Park, Navy Intelligence, and Dr. Michael Torres, whose official title was Technical Consultant, but whose real job involved making impossible things possible. They were the surviving members of the original Blackbird team, the only people besides Alina who truly understood what they'd created together. Jesus Christ, Webb said, standing as Zara entered. I thought you'd gotten out for good. His weathered face bore new lines and his hair had gone completely gray, but his eyes still held the sharp focus that had made him one of the most effective special operations officers of his generation. I thought so too, Zara replied, taking the seat across from him, but apparently our past has other ideas. Park remained seated, but her nod of acknowledgement was warm. She'd been the intelligence analyst who'd provided targeting data for Zara's most dangerous missions, the voice in her earpiece that had guided her through enemy territory when electronic warfare made navigation systems useless. Now she wore commander's stripes and the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent years in the classified world. Torres didn't speak immediately, but when he finally looked up from the tablet he'd been studying, his expression was grim. I've been analyzing the intelligence data from the Chinese intercepts, he said without preamble. Alina didn't just steal our technology, she improved it. The J-20 modifications show innovations that are years ahead of where we left off. Admiral Chen activated the room's holographic projector, and suddenly they were surrounded by three-dimensional technical schematics that made Zara's heart race. The modified J-20 fighters were beautiful in the way that deadly things often were, their sleek lines hiding technology that represented the cutting edge of military aviation. The stealth characteristics are unprecedented, Torres continued, highlighting specific sections of the aircraft. But more concerning is this. The display zoomed in on the aircraft's sensor array, revealing a complex web of antennas and receivers. They've integrated your quantum radar concepts with their existing systems. The result is an aircraft that can see our stealth fighters while remaining invisible to our sensors. The implications were staggering. For decades, American military doctrine had relied on stealth technology to maintain air superiority. The ability to strike without being detected had been the cornerstone of U.S. power projection around the globe. If the Chinese had genuinely neutralized that advantage, it would reshape the entire balance of global military power. How many are operational? Zara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Intelligence estimates put it at 12 aircraft, Park replied, her voice carrying the weight of classified certainty. But they're manufacturing more. Our sources suggest they could have 50 by year's end. 50 aircraft capable of penetrating American defenses at will. 50 fighters that could strike targets deep inside U.S.-controlled territory without warning. The mathematics of warfare had just shifted dramatically, and not in America's favor. Chen leaned forward, her expression intense. Which brings us to why you're here, Valkyrie. We need to level the playing field. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a new aircraft, one that Zara recognized with a mixture of pride and dread. The YF-23A Black Widow II sat in the carrier's hangar like a predator waiting to hunt. Its angular stealth profile hadn't changed in 15 years, but Zara could see the subtle modifications that spoke of continuous upgrades and improvements. New engine intakes, enhanced sensor arrays, and weapons systems that looked more sophisticated than anything that had existed when she'd last flown. We kept her operational, Chen said quietly, kept her upgraded, kept her waiting. She paused, then added with unmistakable meaning, kept her waiting for you. The Black Widow had been Zara's aircraft, her personal fighter, modified specifically for the deep penetration missions that had made Valkyrie a legend. It was the reason she'd walked away from military service, not because she'd lost her nerve, but because she'd realized that the technology she'd helped create was too dangerous for any one person to control. Now, sitting in a briefing room surrounded by the ghosts of her past, Zara understood that she was being asked to become that person again. To slip back into the cockpit of an aircraft that had been designed to do impossible things, and to fly it into a situation that might determine the future balance of global power. The mission parameters are straightforward, Webb said, activating another section of the holographic display. Penetrate Chinese airspace, locate Alina's research facility, and acquire technical intelligence on their stealth improvements. He paused, then added grimly, and if possible, eliminate the source. Eliminate the source. Military euphemism for killing Alina Vasquez, the woman who'd been her partner, her friend, and briefly her lover. The woman who'd helped her design the technology that was now being used against them. Zara stared at the mission parameters floating in the holographic display, each objective written in the clinical language that made warfare sound like a business presentation. But she could read between the lines. could see the desperate hope that she might somehow turn the tide of a technological arms race that America was losing. "When do we launch?" she asked, because in the end that was the only question that mattered. She'd walked away from this world once, but the world hadn't walked away from her. Alina's betrayal had made this personal, and Zara Washington, Billionaire CEO, was about to disappear completely, replaced by Valkyrie, the ghost pilot who'd once been America's most classified weapon. The storm clouds that had been gathering over the Caribbean were moving toward the South China Sea, carrying with them the promise of a confrontation that would test everything Zara thought she'd left behind. The pre-flight briefing took place in the carrier's most secure compartment, a windowless room lined with acoustic dampening material that could prevent even the most sophisticated electronic surveillance from penetrating its secrets. The holographic displays had been replaced by old-fashioned paper maps and photographs, technology so archaic that it was immune to digital interception. "The target facility is located on Hainan Island," Park said, pointing to aerial reconnaissance photographs that showed a complex of buildings disguised as a civilian research center. "Alina's team has been working there for the past 2 months, developing the next generation of stealth technology." Her finger traced the perimeter of the facility. "Heavy security, both electronic and human. SAM sites here, here, and here. Fighter patrols every 20 minutes. Zara studied the photographs with the analytical precision that had made her legendary. The facility's layout told a story of rapid construction and absolute security. Whoever had designed it understood that they were protecting secrets worth more than money. They were protecting the future of warfare itself. "Electronic countermeasures?" she asked, already mentally planning her approach route. "Extensive," Torres replied, sliding another photograph across the table. "They've integrated your old jamming protocols with their existing systems. Any conventional aircraft would be detected and intercepted before it got within 50 miles of the target." "Good thing I'm not flying a conventional aircraft," Zara said quietly. The YF-23A Black Widow II had been designed specifically to penetrate exactly this type of defense network. Its quantum stealth capabilities, combined with her own electronic warfare expertise, should allow her to reach the target undetected. Should, in the world of military aviation, should was a word that got pilots killed. Admiral Chen activated a secure communication terminal, its screen displaying the face of someone Zara hadn't expected to see. Secretary of Defense Patricia Hawkins looked older than her official photographs suggested, the weight of national security evident in every line of her face. "Ms. Washington," Hawkins said, her voice carrying across the encrypted connection with crystal clarity, "I want you to understand that this mission has been personally authorized by the President. We're not just talking about national security, we're talking about global stability." The formality of using her civilian name wasn't lost on Zara. This conversation was being recorded, would become part of the official record, sanitized and classified but preserved for history. When she replied, it would be as Zara Washington, CEO, not as Valkyrie, the ghost pilot. "I understand the stakes, Madam Secretary," she replied carefully. "The technology in question represents a fundamental shift in military capabilities. If it proliferates beyond Chinese control, it could destabilize every existing defense arrangement." Hawkins nodded grimly. "Our allies are watching this situation very carefully. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, they're all asking the same question. Can America still protect them if our technological advantages disappear?" She paused, then added with unmistakable weight, "The answer to that question may determine whether we see peace or war in the Pacific." The communication terminated, leaving the briefing room in silence. Everyone present understood what hadn't been said explicitly. This wasn't just a reconnaissance mission. This was a test of American resolve, a demonstration that the U.S. military could still project power anywhere in the world, regardless of the technological obstacles. Torres handed Zara a data pad containing the technical specifications for her aircraft's latest upgrades. "We've integrated some new systems since you left," he said with something approaching enthusiasm. "Quantum radar array, enhanced electronic warfare suite, and adaptive camouflage that can shift the aircraft's electromagnetic signature in real time." She scrolled through the specifications, her mind automatically calculating the tactical advantages and limitations of each system. The Black Widow had always been more than just an aircraft. It was a flying computer, a platform for electronic warfare systems that could turn the electromagnetic spectrum into a weapon. "Flight time to target?" she asked, already knowing the answer would be measured in hours rather than minutes. 18 hours, assuming you maintain stealth profile throughout," Webb replied. "We've arranged for a tanker rendezvous over international waters, but after that, you're on your own until extraction." 18 hours alone in enemy airspace, flying an aircraft that officially didn't exist on a mission that would never be acknowledged. It was exactly the kind of operation that had made Valkyrie a legend, and exactly the kind of operation that had convinced her to walk away from military service. But Alina's betrayal had changed everything. The technology they'd created together was being used to threaten everything Zara had spent 15 years building in the civilian world. Her company, her employees, her carefully constructed life, all of it was at risk if Chinese technological superiority shifted the global balance of power too dramatically. "When do I launch?" she asked, because delaying the decision wouldn't make it any easier. Chen checked her watch. "Sunset. The timing has to be perfect. You need darkness for the approach, but enough ambient light for target identification." She paused, then added quietly, "And Valkyrie, this time you're not coming back to a world that can pretend this technology doesn't exist. After tonight, everything changes." The flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford at sunset was a cathedral of controlled violence. Aircraft worth hundreds of millions of dollars sat in precise rows, their weapons systems armed and ready for combat. Technicians in colored jerseys moved between them like priests tending to mechanical gods, each aircraft representing American military might projected across the world's oceans. But in Hangar Bay 3, separated from the main flight operations by multiple security checkpoints, sat an aircraft that existed in the spaces between official records. The YF-23A Black Widow II looked like a predatory insect rendered in stealth composite and titanium, its angular surfaces designed to scatter radar waves into harmless echoes. Zara approached her aircraft with the reverence of someone greeting an old friend. Every line of the Black Widow was familiar, from the swept-back wings to the recessed engine intakes that made it nearly invisible to infrared detection. But the details told the story of 15 years of continuous improvement. New sensor arrays, enhanced weapon systems, and modifications that represented the cutting edge of American aerospace technology. Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos, the aircraft's crew chief, stood waiting beside the cockpit ladder. Santos had been maintaining the Black Widow since Zara's active duty days, one of the few people trusted with knowledge of the aircraft's true capabilities. "She's ready, ma'am," Santos said with quiet pride. "All systems green, full fuel load, and special weapons package loaded per your specifications." She handed Zara a clipboard containing the pre-flight checklist. Though they both knew it was largely ceremonial, Zara had memorized every system on the aircraft years ago. The special weapons package was something new, a collection of electronic warfare devices designed specifically to penetrate and disrupt the Chinese stealth network. Not kinetic weapons, but data weapons, viruses and logic bombs that could turn enemy systems against themselves. Zara began her walk-around inspection, her trained eye-catching details that would escape most pilots. The aircraft's skin showed the subtle shimmer of adaptive camouflage technology, surfaces that could change their electromagnetic properties in real time. The engine intakes bore new modifications that would make the Black Widow's heat signature even more difficult to detect. "How's she been flying?" Zara asked, running her hand along the aircraft's leading edge. "Like a dream," Santos replied. "We've kept her in perfect condition, regular test flights, system updates, the works." She paused, then added with unmistakable emotion, "We always knew you'd come back eventually." The comment hit Zara harder than she'd expected. For 15 years, she'd thought of her military career as something she'd left behind permanently. But apparently the military had never stopped believing she'd return. They'd maintained her aircraft, preserved her security clearances, and kept a space open for the ghost pilot who'd walked away from the most classified program in American history. Admiral Chen approached as Zara completed her inspection. "Intelligence update," she said, handing over a sealed envelope marked with classification stamps. "Chinese naval forces have increased their patrol frequency. You'll need to adjust your ingress route to avoid their search patterns." Inside the envelope were photographs taken by satellites and reconnaissance aircraft, showing Chinese destroyers and frigates positioned throughout the South China Sea like chess pieces on a three-dimensional board. Their patrol routes were carefully calculated to provide overlapping coverage, creating a defensive network that would challenge any conventional aircraft. "Any word from Alina?" Zara asked, though she wasn't sure what answer she wanted to hear. Chen shook her head. "Radio silence from the facility. Either they're maintaining communication discipline, or," she didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. Either Alina was being careful or something had gone wrong at the research facility. The possibility that Alina might be dead, that this entire mission might be based on outdated intelligence, was something Zara couldn't afford to consider. Not now, not when she was about to climb into a cockpit for the first time in 15 years and fly into the most heavily defended airspace in the world. "Time to go," Chen said quietly. "The weather window won't last long and you need every advantage you can get." Zara nodded and began climbing the ladder to her cockpit. The familiar routine of strapping in, connecting systems, and running through pre-flight checks felt like putting on an old uniform that still fit perfectly. Her hands moved across the controls with muscle memory precision, each switch and button exactly where she remembered them. The Black Widow's engines spooled up with a whisper-quiet whine, their advanced turbofans designed to minimize acoustic signature even at full power. On the flight deck above, she could see the controlled chaos of normal carrier operations. FA-18 Super Hornets being launched on routine patrols, their afterburners painting brief stars against the darkening sky. But her launch would be different. No catapult, no dramatic acceleration from 0 to flying speed in 3 seconds. The Black Widow would simply taxi to the edge of the flight deck and disappear into the night like smoke dissipating in wind. "Valkyrie, you are cleared for departure," came the voice of the air traffic controller, using her call sign for the first time in 15 years. Fair winds and following seas. It was a traditional Navy farewell, but in this context, it carried the weight of history. Somewhere in the South China Sea, Elena Vasquez was working with Chinese military scientists to perfect technology that could shift the global balance of power. And flying toward her through the gathering darkness was the one person who understood that technology well enough to stop it. The Black Widow rolled forward into the night, carrying secrets toward a confrontation that had been 15 years in the making. Behind her, the lights of the Gerald R. Ford faded into the distance like a constellation sinking below the horizon. Ahead lay enemy territory, defended by aircraft using her own technology against her. But Valkyrie was coming home, and the ghosts of her past were about to become very real indeed. Flying the YF-23A Black Widow II at night over the Pacific Ocean was like riding a mechanical shadow through liquid darkness. The aircraft's cockpit displays cast a soft blue glow across Zara's face, each screen showing her a different aspect of the electronic battlefield surrounding her. Radar returns painted ghostly pictures of merchant ships and fishing vessels far below, while her threat warning systems remained mercifully quiet. For now, the aircraft's quantum stealth systems worked by creating a field of electromagnetic interference around the Black Widow, essentially making it invisible to conventional radar. But the technology was power-intensive and generated heat signatures that required careful management. Zara monitored the stealth system's status on a dedicated display, watching temperature levels fluctuate as the aircraft's computers constantly adjusted to maintain invisibility. "Valkyrie, this is Looking Glass," came a voice through her encrypted communication system. Looking Glass was the E-3 AWACS aircraft orbiting 300 miles behind her, providing intelligence updates and serving as her lifeline to the outside world. "We're showing increased Chinese air activity along your projected route. Recommend course adjustment to bearing 270. Zara studied her navigation display, calculating the implications of the course change. The new route would add 30 minutes to her flight time and require her to pass closer to a Chinese naval patrol. But it would also avoid the fighter patrols that might be equipped with Elena's enhanced detection systems. Looking Glass, Valkyrie copies, adjusting to 270. Her voice carried clearly through the encrypted channel, but she could feel the isolation settling around her like a familiar weight. Once she crossed into Chinese territorial waters, radio communication would become impossible. The electromagnetic signatures of her transmissions would give away her position to any enemy sensors in the area. The course adjustment took her over a section of ocean where the water was so deep that sonar couldn't reach the bottom. It was an appropriate metaphor, Zara thought. She was flying into unknown depths, where the normal rules of warfare had been suspended by technology that shouldn't exist. Her aircraft's passive sensors began detecting the first signs of Chinese electronic activity: radar sweeps from naval vessels, communication signals from military aircraft, and the subtle electromagnetic signatures of advanced weapon systems. Each signal told a story of defensive preparation, of a military force that knew something was coming but couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Elena had taught them well. The Chinese were using American electronic warfare techniques, creating electromagnetic patterns designed to confuse and disorient enemy aircraft. But they were using the techniques exactly as Elena had learned them 15 years ago, without the improvements and modifications that Zara had developed during.